Hello, beautiful friends. Welcome back to my channel. So I am Kyla Givehand, and today I'm talking to you about fountain pen stuff. Welcome. And whenever you're watching this and wherever you are in the world, I do hope that you are receiving all the love and light and good energy that I'm sending in your direction. So today I'm talking about the 5 myths that I hear most often as it relates to fountain pens. So without further ado, let's head over to the table and get into it. See you there. All right, lovelies, here we are over at the table where we are going to look at some pens, some papers, and talk about some of the myths that surround fountain pens that I also sometimes wonder about. So here we go. The first one I want to start with is the one that I think I get asked the most about: cost of fountain pens. So there's this myth out there that fountain pens are too expensive. I showed on another video that some fountain pens that are my favorites for beginners. And in those, I was trying to also show you the ones that I think are not that expensive, so that a beginner doesn't have to invest a lot of money in a fountain pen for the first time just to get started. So fountain pens, a lot of people think they are a luxury item and only people who have a lot of money can buy fountain pens. And that may be true because there are some fountain pens in the world that are extremely pricey. I don't happen to own any of those. Let's just go ahead and name that right out of the gate. But I will say that there are some high-end pens, but there's also a lot of affordable pens out in the pen world. And you have to just figure out what your personal range is, because my personal range has changed over the years. When I first started out with fountain pens, I was in high school. And so I could only afford what pretty much, my parents or my job would, my little part-time job that I had in high school would allow me and afford me to buy. Then I moved on to college and still was pretty much in a very limited budget for fountain pens and hadn't really started collecting them yet. Then I moved from that to being a teacher, where I had a full-time job and I had steady pay and I could budget. And so I did budget, like some people budget for shopping for school clothes or shopping for, or going to the spa or whatever your thing is. My thing for budgeting, that little extra column in the budget line, was always for fountain pens and stationery and paper and things like that. So then from there, I went on to start my own business and also was working as a teacher. So I had almost like 2 incomes. And so over the years, my budget has changed, and my range from what I thought was like an inexpensive pen to an expensive pen, slowly that needle just moved as my budget shifted and changed. And then there are some years where I've had to really streamline and be very lean, and I had to move that line of how much money I would spend on a pen. I had to move that back closer to zero. And then some moments where I'm like, I want to buy a pen for myself for my birthday, and I would move that line back over a little bit further out. So you just decide what works for you, what your wallet can afford, and what your lifestyle can support. So all of that to say, I'm going to show you some pens that I still feel I've tried to keep pens that are $50 or less. There might be one that snuck in here that might be in a $60 range, but for the most part, the pens I'm going to show you are pens that I think are in a really good range. I don't have them ordered by price, but I'm going to do my best to kind of show them in a way that I think is like from least expensive on up. So let's start with these 2 little swan pens by Givehand. I really love these. They also come in a shark. And I think I have the sharks somewhere around here. I might have gifted a couple of them. But these are some great pens. They write beautifully, and I love them tremendously. It is, and I'm going to have links for all of these. They come in 2 different nib sizes, which is why I brought 2 of them out, and a range of colors. But they are really beautiful writers. The nibs are really smooth. They are really great. So one has what we call a hooded nib. So here we have a nib that has like a little hood over it. So it's basically a nib that is, you know, similar to this, but it has a covering over it. So we call that a hooded nib. And then just a standard nib that we're used to seeing. This one is probably a medium and this is probably a fine. And I really love these pens. Again, like I said, you can have all sorts of colors. The pen body can be different colors. And then it has this beautiful little swan as the cap. And like I said, they also come with a shark. There's a shark option. So those Givehand, and I'll have everything I'm going to show you today, I will have linked down below. So those pens, you get them in a set of about 12 or 13 pens for under $15. So that's a lot of pens to play with, right? These are great for sketching. They're great for everyday writing. They're very lightweight, but they still have a good feel in the hand. So I really love these, and I recommend them highly. The next one I'm going to pull out here, let's go with I've shown this one before. This is a Sailor, and I don't remember the name of this pen. I'll find it and put it below, but it has a Fude nib, and I love that because you can do some wonderful things with that. It gives you a very bold line. So this one gives you a line. You can do a really thin line. The ink is being weird. You can do a thick line with this. You can also do a very thin, skinny line. So it has, if you flip it over. So this one I love for, you know, sketchy things, but also just doing line work. It's a really great pen, and it's fairly reasonably priced. I want to say I spent under $20 for this pen. So I will put, it's not the cutest pen. It's not pretty or anything, but it's functional. And I think it offers, like I said, a variety of line quality. So the next one I'm going to go to is the Kaweco, and I've shown this one. This was one of the ones I showed in the, or similar to this, in the beginner fountain pen video. This just happens to be a clear body one with a translucent red, but these are really great pocket pens. Kaweco Sport, nice size, good in the hand, depending on the size of your hand. I think for people with larger hands, they may not agree with me on that, but there's that. Kaweco. The next one I'm going to go to, I've also shown. This is the Pilot Metropolitan or Retro Pop. I love these pens, nice and sturdy. I typically don't like a metal pen, but because it doesn't have a metal grip section, I love these pens. So it gives you the quality of a good metal, you know, body, but with resin, plastic. It's probably plastic more than resin, grip section. The nibs are really great. It's Pilot. You can't beat Pilot. I'm going to put that one back over here because I actually want to talk about that one again in a moment. Another really good one is this Monteverde. Anything by Monteverde, I would say check it out. But this particular one is the Monza. M-O-N-Z-A, and I may not be pronouncing it the way they would pronounce it, but I love this pen. It's such a great pen. It's, I mean, I could say that about a lot of pens, but this nib, the Monteverde nibs are really great nibs. But also what I really love about this pen, it has this feel in your hand that is, it mimics what I think, it mimics the, Pilot, what is that pen? Pilot Prera, I think is what it's called. So it has that, but it's a little, just a tiny bit bigger. So I really love this pen. I think it has a, it's a great pen. Demonstrator, whenever they're clear like that, we call that a demonstrator because you can see through it, and you can demonstrate how the pen is meant to be used or how the ink flows and all of that. So Monteverde Monza, M-O-N-Z-A. The next one, obviously, this is a no-brainer, y'all. Lamy. Lamy's always going to be, Lamy Safari is always going to be in my top, you know, for all the things. We'll go ahead and pull out the Twisby because that's going to also be in there. So these two are my staples, my go-tos, and they're, for the price of the pen, you can own several of them, you know, depending on your budget and how much you want to spend on pens. But they are definitely two that I love and adore. Slowly trying to creep into my collection are the Ferris wheel press carousel pens. I like these pens a lot. I wouldn't put them in my top 5 in terms of my top 5 favorite pens, but they are really great pens, especially for beginners, because the price is right. The nib is, I mean, for the nib on this pen, this nib deserves a body that is way different than this pen body, but I think that's what makes it affordable. It has a stellar nib and just sort of a basic kind of body, but the nib makes up for that. And it's just a really beautiful, you know, it's just a beautiful writer. The pen is great. The inks are great. I love their inks way more than anything else, but that nib is a great nib. So the fountain pen, or the Ferris wheel press carousel. Couple of others here I want to bring out. The Perkios, I've shared these before. These are also by Kaweco, and they come in a variety of colors. I love them because you can mix and match, which technically I think you could do with any pen that has the same exact pen body and all the things. But for some reason, these pens are the ones that make me want to exchange and make like Franken pens, and do funny things with the colors of the caps and the bodies and all the things. Because, you know, the cap, the body, and the grip section all have a color, and so you can really play around with that and get some funky combinations. So I love this. The nibs are great. They have different nib sizes and lots of colors to play with, and it's a really great pen. Let's see what we have here next. I'm just going through. All right, let's go to TWSBI again, because this is the TWSBI Swipe, and this pen is, to me, this pen would be the equivalent of, like, all of these three would be in the same grouping for me. The TWSBI Swipe, the Kaweco Perkio, and the Ferris wheel press carousel. I would kind of put those in the same category in terms of how they write, how they feel in my hand. But they're also really great and affordable pens, and so I love it. And you know, listen, you cannot beat a TWSBI nib. They are just stellar nibs. This happens to be a stub nib, but these are, I love the way they feel in my hand. They're just, yeah, I give them like 5 thumbs up. I only have 2 thumbs, but you know, lots of thumbs up. All right, where else do we have here? Okay, yes, I pulled out a couple of others. This pen, oh, I can't even tell you. I have so many stories about these pens. I think this is an Australian company. I think the name of the company, I'm trying to see it. I should maybe put my glasses on, y'all. Yes, that's the thing. 52-year-old Kyla wears glasses. So Super 5, I think, is the name of the pen, and I'm not sure if that's the name of the company or not, but I have to tell y'all the story of these pens another day. But these pens they are weighted so beautifully. I love the weight of these pens. The nib is really great. You can do cartridge or converter with them. I have about 6 different colors, I think, of this pen. And I really, man, I love them. It took me a while to collect all of them. But again, I'll have to tell you the story of these another time. They have lots of, I won't say lots of colors, several different colors. I'll have to do a separate video all about these pens because they are magnificent and I really love them. I don't use it enough, and I brought it out to start using it a little bit more. So there's that one. I'm also going to go ahead and go up one level with TWSBI. So up one level might seem a little, we'll say, over to a different pen. This is the TWSBI Diamond. And I love this pen. It's nice. It's a heavyweight pen. Great colors. I have the red, and I think I have the ice blue or something, sky blue. I can't remember the exact name of it, but something in that realm. Really beautiful. There's one that's on my to buy list, and I'll let you know if I buy it and when I grab that one. But this pen is just really great. Again, it has that standard TWSBI filling mechanism. And it's just, I don't know, they're very, if you don't like a heavy pen, you won't like this. So I didn't put this on my list for beginners because I think for beginners, a heavier pen, yeah, it can be a little difficult to learn with for the first time. It can cause a lot of fatigue in your hands. So I like to start with a pen that's a little bit lighter for beginners, but these pens are just phenomenal. I love them so much. So TWSBI Diamond. I want to say this is, sorry, TWSBI Diamond 580. Let's be even more specific. All right, so the TWSBI Diamond 580. And then this is a pen that is new to me. I have not even inked it up, but I love the price point. It's again from Sailor. Sailor is a brand that has a range of price points. So you can find a lot of different options for getting a Sailor in your life and in your collection. This one is called the Tuzu, Tuzu. And like I said, I haven't even inked it up yet, but it has some sort of mechanism that allows you to change the grip section to fit your hand and how you hold your pen and the angle at which you want your nib to your fingers. So it's a really, I like the weight of it. I like the style of the pen. Maybe it comes in a couple of colors. I can't say for sure, but this is one that I'm excited to try. I haven't inked it up yet, but when I do, I'll let you know. And we'll talk through that one. And then last but definitely not least in my sort of you can afford fountain pens list is this Schneider pen. And it is, I think people don't talk about this pen enough. It's actually a really cool pen. And I'm going to show you why I think it's a really cool pen. Number one, it's just a weird body type and body style. It has a really beautiful, you know, body type and body style, something a little different. And I really like that look. It's kind of got a futuristic kind of look. The nib is great, works beautifully. It's a great workhorse pen. The thing I love about it is they also make a roller ball in this same style. And what's great about it is you can use fountain pen inks. It takes a fountain pen converter and cartridge, just like the fountain pen does, but it works for a roller. It writes as a roller ball. And I think that's just a really cool thing. I have one other pen in my collection that does that, and I'll have to talk about that on another day. I have some videos planned for us that I think will bring back this pen. You'll see it again. All right, so that's my response to the myth that fountain pens are too expensive. I don't agree with that. I think you can get some great pens under 50 bucks, and they can be a great part of your collection and serve you well for many, many years. All right, so let's move on to myth number 2. All right, myth number 2 is that fountain pens are messy and they leak everywhere. And listen, I'm going to say yes, but to that myth. And the reason I say it's a myth is because that's not true. It depends on how you handle the pen. It depends on how you write with the pen. It depends on whether or not you keep your pens clean and you love on them. And I like to think that if you treat your pens well, they'll treat you well. So modern fountain pens. Now, if we go back to vintage fountain pens, if you're someone who collects vintage fountain pens, or you have pens that are way older, like maybe you've got pens that your great-great-grandfather gave you or left for you, or that have been passed down for generations, or you've been going to vintage sales or estate sales and you find those pens are going to be a lot different than pens, more modern fountain pens. The design quality and what people are doing now with fountain pens has changed over the years. And so modern fountain pens, I think, are designed with a different kind of attention to the engineering that prevents leaks, which is why we're able to have retractable fountain pens now, is because they have figured out a way to keep those pens from leaking. Now, I'm not telling you that your pen is never going to leak, especially if you misuse the pen, or store it incorrectly, or you don't clean the pen regularly, or I don't know, you do something weird and wonky, like, overextend when you're doing that piston fill thing, or you're working with an eyedropper type pen where you've dropped the ink into the body of the pen, but you haven't put any silicone grease to seal that connection between the threads and the grip section. So there are a lot of reasons why the pen could leak, cause a mess. Absolutely. Some days when I'm doing pen cleaning, y'all, I'm a little clumsy. I spill ink. I get it on things. I've got ink on this table. I've got ink on my fingers all the time. Like, it can be that. But I also think that now this is just my opinion, but that's the charm of fountain pens as well. So I invite you to embrace the fact that fountain pens can be leaky and can be messy, but there are also many, many ways that we can be a little more intentional and a little more careful. One of the things I say about fountain pens is they make me slow down. So when I'm filling them and I'm having cleaning day with my pens, I do have to slow down. It's not something that I can do in a hurry and a rush. It's not something that I can do haphazardly. I have to really be intentional. And so I think that the myth that fountain pens are always messy and always leaky, I don't know that that's true. I think that you can store them properly, and you can clean your pens to prevent these problems, and you can just be a little more intentional and a little more mindful when you work with them. All right, let's go on to myth number 3. All right, loves. Myth number 3 is fountain pens are hard to use. And I think that they do require, first of all, modern fountain pens, I think, are very user-friendly. Like this Kaweco Sport, it's super simple, right? You just unscrew the pen, pop this on, and you just write. The TWSBIs, the Lamy Safaris, those are all pens that I think you just ink them up and go. They're really easy. They don't require a lot of muss and fuss. These little cartridges, back in the day, vintage pens didn't take cartridges, right? That was a thing. You had to use a converter. And some of them you had to use what was called a bladder, which that's a whole other conversation. I do have one bladder pen. I do not use it because that thing freaks me out. But that's another conversation. But now with cartridges, it's just as easy as popping that thing in, putting the body of the pen back together. I'm not going to ink this one right now. I'm not ready to ink it, but putting that pen back together, and if it's postable, put the cap on the back and write. It really can be that simple. So I think that, like I said, modern fountain pens are really sort of designed to be user-friendly, especially things like this Kaweco Sport. I think the Perkios I would put in that category, and definitely the TWSBI Ecos, any of the TWSBIs, the Lamy Safaris, really any of the Lamys, and the Pilot Metropolitans, any of those as well. So for beginners especially, they can just write smoothly without requiring any special grip or technique. You don't have to hold the pen a certain way with the more modern pens. In fact, a lot of the more modern pens, is this one? Not that one. Yeah, a lot of the more modern pens will even have built into them, doesn't. Well, this one kind of does. They will have built into them what I call a finger stop, right? So don't go beyond that little grip section, right? You're not meant to be holding the pen all the way down here. You're going to get ink on your fingers if you're holding that nib way there. But if you bring it back a little bit and you're holding here, and I've even seen some people who hold way back by the threads. I don't hold that far down, but a lot of the pens have that rounded section there to remind you, don't go over, right? Stay there. Also, some pens have shaped sections on the grip to show you how to, show you where to place, give you proper placement. So that can help. That can keep them from being like hard to use. This one is harder to see, but it has both that rounded piece and it has the little finger stops on it as well. So again, this to me makes the pens a little easier to use. You don't have to, figure out, let's see. The Kaweco Sport doesn't have any of those, guides. And so for some people, I've seen people hold the fountain pen and they're trying to hold it straight up and down like this and write with it. But it's just meant to be at a comfortable angle, right? So I don't think that they I never felt like fountain pens were difficult to use. I just picked it up and gravitated towards how to use them. And I think that that can be true, especially when the ones that have the grip section that sort of shows you how to hold the pen or gives you some guides. I think that helps. You don't need any special technique of holding the pen or doing anything special to use them. So they are a little bit intuitive and can be used right out of the box. So fountain pens are not hard to use. Let's move on to myth number 4. All right, y'all, this one is my favorite one because I'm like, what? Okay, but I also see where people get this from. The myth is fountain pens are fragile and you can't use them every day. They're only for special moments and special occasions like signing documents or I don't know, whatever other people think they're special for. But the myth is that people think fountain pens are fragile, they're delicate, they're collector's items. You just leave them on your desk and you look at them. You don't write with them. That makes me gasp. You absolutely write with them. So I think that that comes from, again, pens that are more vintage that could potentially be a little bit fragile. I think that people get concerned and worried about the nibs because the nibs, you know, the nibs look whatever, but there are some nibs, y'all, that are gold. Those things are almost somewhat like, I'm not going to say they're indestructible, but they're great. We've got steel nibs, high performing steel nibs, depending on the pen you're working with. I'm not telling you that these nibs that you can just drop it down on the nib and it won't mess up. I have had that happen before. So that can happen. However, the pen itself, the nibs are somewhat delicate and fragile, but that's why they have caps on them. So you keep your pen capped, you just be careful, and that will protect your nib. But some of these pens, like I showed this one, and I said I was going to bring it back because the metal body on this thing, I have dropped this pen numerous times. It's probably got a few dings, maybe a couple scratches on it. But even with that, the pen still works beautifully, still works fine. I've dropped my Lamy Safaris so many times, I can't even tell you. Listen, I don't consider myself a clumsy person. And also, I drop things a lot. So there's that. I've dropped a TWSBI Eco before. I also wanted to have this moment to bring up this. This is from Kara's. And I think I've had this pen for a very long time. I think this company is still around making fountain pens. Do not quote that. This is an all metal body. Let me tell you something. This thing is almost a weapon. I mean, it is it's sturdy. It's heavy. You know, I could use it to nail some nails on the wall. It's a great pen. So not all fountain pens feel delicate and foo-foo and you got to handle them with care. This thing, I want to just say that when they made these, they were making these for mechanics and people were like, yeah, I'm a mechanic, but I want a fountain pen. So you've got that. And this, for a long time, this was one of my favorite pens to write with. This thing is just, that nib is gorgeous. It's a beautiful pen. I love the color. It doesn't post, I have posted mine and you can tell that I force it because I like my pens to post, but it also makes it super heavy when it's posted. So great pen. This is one of the ones that I would say definitely reminds me that my fountain pens aren't all fragile, aren't all delicate. And while I do collect them and I love them as collector's items, they are meant to be written with. So many of the pens are durable enough for you to carry them every single day. And some of them, I mean, I'm telling you, my pens have been bumping around in my backpack. I've had pens on some very interesting adventures. So I'll just say that. But some pens are meant to be rugged and portable, like the Kaweco Sport, hence the word sport. The Kaweco company also makes a pen just like this that is called the aluminum. It has an aluminum body. Lamy makes you've got the Safari that isn't aluminum, and then you have the Lamy AL, which AL is for aluminum. So like I said, they don't have to all be thought of as delicate little pens that you can only keep on your desk. So definitely grab you a couple of pens that you feel comfortable just dropping into a bag. I often talk about pens as being my bump around pens, and that's what I mean. They can bump up against things and they still will work. All right, let's get to myth number 5, our final and last one for this episode. All right, lovelies. The next myth is that you have to use expensive paper with fountain pens. Now, I'm going to start right out of the gate and say this is a personal preference. Now, I'm a little bit of a pen snob. Okay, I'm a lot of bit of a pen snob, but I'm definitely a paper snob. I am pretty particular about the paper that I write with. I have all these, and we'll talk paper in another video more specifically, but I do have things that matter to me when it comes to paper. I will say this, you don't need to be a pen snob, but I do encourage you. There are lots of companies out there that in some stationery shops, I'll try to link to a few, that sell paper sampler packs. I invite you to invest in a paper sampler pack so that you can see which papers are the papers you most want, that you like, because I am one of those who, for a while, I was like, the paper doesn't matter. All through high school and college, I was like, the paper doesn't matter. And then I went to a stationery shop. My first year of teaching, I moved down to South Florida in the US, and I started going to these stationery shops that they had down there, and there was a tester page to try out pens, and it was a game changer. So not all papers are created equal. And there are some really inexpensive papers that you can purchase out there. So with that said, I'm kind of looking around my room here. I don't think I grabbed it to show you, but you can buy Tomoe, my top #1 paper. If I could only use one paper with my fountain pens, it would absolutely be Tomoe River paper. You can buy it single sheets and make your own journals. I know y'all are probably like, I don't want to make my own journals, but I know a lot of you out there do. Hello to all my bookbinding pals. So that's what I do. I will make my own journals using Tomoe River paper. I think I've shown several of my journals that have that paper. This is, let's just see here. I never know what I have on this, what stuff I'm showing. I think that's fine. Here's one that I've made that is filled with nothing but Tomoe River paper. The whole thing is Tomoe River paper with some harder cover paper in between the sections. But that is by far my favorite. And so then I just will take and I'll just make a bunch of little journals. This is also one filled with Tomoe River paper, multiple sections. So I like to make my own journals so that I can have the size I want, I can have the number of sheets that I want, all of the things. So #1 for me is you can buy a pad of paper, and Tomoe River is not the only one. You can buy single sheets of some of these others that I'm going to show you and talk about as well. So that's my first tip, is buy the paper in single sheets and make your own little journals. That's a great way to do that. Some of the other papers that I really love are, I said Tomoe River paper. You can also buy it in just a grid section. You saw me I shared this during my currently inked for January. But this one has 160 pages, and look how thin that is. That's the beauty of Tomoe River paper. It's super thin paper. It's really beautiful. This one is the dot grid. It has the cream colored, is that cream or white? That might be the white colored paper. Let's see. Yes, that's the white. This is the cream. So it has dot grid already printed on it. One of the things that I am hoping to do this year, one of my things to try, is to figure out how to print on Tomoe River paper. I haven't figured that out yet. Also, haven't tried to figure it out. Haven't tried it, but it's on my list this year of printing on Tomoe River paper. So these notebooks you can get. This one I got for about $12, I think. So again, pricing will vary based on, is sort of a subjective thing based on what you think is too much or not enough. I have journals I've bought that other people I think would cringe at the amount I spent on the journal. And other people have journals way more expensive than the ones I have. So I think it's relative, and pretty much you have to decide. But I'm trying to keep it in the $30 range, not going over $30 for a particular journal. So this one falls in that $12 to $15 range. Another brand that I really love, let me say this about Tomoe River paper. They do have two different versions, but They have like a 52 GSM. This one is the 52 GSM. And they have a 68, I think, 68, 60 something GSM as well. But this paper, it's like, if you know, you know. So for people who've never written with it, you can't really say you don't like it and you don't think it matters. You have to write on this paper with a fountain pen before you can say that it does not matter. So I know that there are some of you out there that will say, but what about when they changed the formula, recipe, whatever, for their paper? Yes, that did happen. And it slightly changed the paper. Now, I still have some of the paper from pre-changing before they changed it, but even after the change, I still found that the texture of the paper, the feel of it, the way it takes the inks, I still felt like it did a really great, I mean, it's still my favorite paper. That did not change. So, that's what I have to say about Tomoe River. All right, so moving on. Let's talk about, let me grab, I have some papers sitting over here. Try not to have an avalanche of things falling on me. This one I'll talk about next. This is Clairefontaine, and I really love these little journals by them. I'm not really a fan of lined paper, but if I'm going to use a lined paper, Clairefontaine's the one I like. Very, very bright white paper. And a lot of people like this paper over Tomoe River. I'm not in that camp. This would probably be second or third for me. I think the paper's probably, I want to say it's like a 90. It's a thicker paper. It's definitely thicker than Tomoe River. Tomoe River paper is super thin, ultra thin. This paper is like standard paper. It feels like it has a coating on it, which is kind of what turns me off a little bit, is how slick this paper is, but I still put this in my top 5. So Clairefontaine, and you can write, I think the other thing is most of these papers I'm going to show you can be written with fountain pens or any other pen that you have. But I like this because I really like also that I can use a little bit of mixed media on it. I can bring my watercolors, colored pencils, markers. I can do some other stuff with it, which I can also do with my Tomoe River paper. So Clairefontaine is top of my list. And also this journal was $8. And it says it right here, 96 sheets. Oh, I thought it would tell me the oh, it does. 90 GSM is this one. So 90 GSM on that. This notebook I actually got for $8, but I got it on sale at Joann's Fabrics, of all places, right? So look for, you don't always have to go shop at the fancy stationery stores. You can get it from other places. So Clairefontaine would be my next choice. So let's see if I can keep these. Let's keep these on the desk. All right, so we got Tomoe River, Clairefontaine. Next in my list, I think I will say is probably, I would have to go with Rhodia as my next one. Again, I really love this paper because, oh, I've got stuff in that journal. Didn't realize I did. Let's see what we got going on here. Huh. I guess I wrote in this a lot more than I realized. All right, so, oh, it looks like I let one of the kiddos write in it as well. So it's got a lot of little bits. I'm trying to find a page that doesn't have a lot of writing. But I didn't realize I had written as much in this as I had. Okay, so here we go. I like this particular one. This is, again, Rhodia is the brand. And this is actually, I believe these two companies, Clairefontaine and Rhodia, are somehow connected. I think that this one I would say is more like fancy folks. And this one is like everyday people who just want to write. So, you like the voices? Okay. So you have those two. I think they're, like I said, I think these companies are connected. But Rhodia, is actually, I wrote on Rhodia paper before I ever wrote on Clairefontaine or Tomoe River. And this also was a game changer for paper and fountain pens for me. It just really, I think it was also like my first gridded little journal. But yeah, the paper, just the ink, the pen just. So when you hear people talking about sheening inks, these papers that I'm showing you will allow you to see the sheening in your inks a lot more than if you just use like regular loose leaf paper from Mead, right? So you can kind of see the shimmer and the sheen on this a lot better. And so the paper will make a difference. How absorbent the paper is, how it absorbs the ink and what it does with the ink. So I have found that papers that work really well with fountain pen inks work really well with watercolor as well. So that has been a really beautiful exploration. So Rhodia, this one was $5.75, but I also have had this for a very long time. So I would say that these are probably somewhere in the $6 to $10 range. I got this one, if I remember correctly, because I've had it for a while. I got this one for, I mean, you can tell the fact that it has the little sticker on it. Not a lot of companies use those stickers anymore. But I got this one from Blick Art Supplies. So again, not from a stationery store. This one's 80 GSM, which is the equivalent of like 21-pound paper, but it's a really high-grade vellum paper is what they call it. So really beautiful. Again, I believe that it's connected to the Clairefontaine company, that they are somehow connected. So that's my conversation around Rhodia. The next one that I'm going to show you is I've mentioned these, I've shown these before in other things, but this the Leuchtturm brand, and I don't know if I'm saying that right or not, y'all. I really don't, if I'm being honest. But the Leuchtturm 1917, these are really great workhorse journals. I can't say enough good things about them, especially in terms of just like an everyday bump around, doesn't feel fancy, but is high quality, the Leuchtturm, because, you know, people, a lot of people see these as like the next level up from like a Moleskine, or one level down from like a Rhodia. So I really like these. I feel like they are they're really good, and you can find them in a lot of places. Like literally I bought a complete, I don't know, 10 or 12 of these Leuchtturm notebooks from a place in the US called Home Goods, which first of all, you would never think you're going to find Leuchtturm there, but they were on sale and they were like, I don't know, $5 for this size, and the larger size was like $7. And I just bought a bunch of them because that's how much I love to use them. So this paper is really good, but you will sometimes get a little bit of bleed through with them. And I find that the wetter, when I'm using my broad nibs, I see a little more ghosting on the other side than when I'm using like a fine nib. So that's just my observation. All right, let's talk about one of my favorite brands that is, oh, I just had an avalanche on my desk, is a little bit more pricey. This is the Stalogy. But I actually put these comparable in terms of price. You can find Stalogy journals in a really, you know, in a lot of different places. Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. I found them in a lot of stores that I'm like, oh, wow, they sell them here. So again, don't have to go to a fancy store. And everything I've shown up to this point, you also can probably get on Amazon. But support your local stationery stores and your local places if you can. I love Amazon just like the next person. But if you've got a little local stationery shop, or mom and pop shop, as we like to call it, you know, shop there too. Spend a little money with them as well. So the Stalogy, one of the things I like about it, let's see if I can find, this one's pretty full. I don't think I have any pages in here that are, I can show this. I feel fine with that. But the paper has this, I mean, the grid on it is so super light. You can barely see that it's gridded. And I like that. It gives you a grid, but not with so much depth that all you see is lines. So that's one of the things I love about this, aside from the paper. The paper's just darn good, okay? It's almost as thin as Tomoe River, not quite. And I think that, let's see if I can find that same page again. Well, here's one that's just as good. This was back in, I don't know, July of 2024, 23, 22, somewhere around there. But you can still see all of the sheening and things on the different inks. The color is very vibrant, and I think it just absorbs really well. Also, let's see if I can find, yeah, that page where I had the watercolor. I just feel like it takes the watercolor so beautifully. You can see the shading of it. And so for me, that is, those are some of the things that I look for and I care about in my papers. So I also think that it's important to know some papers give you shorter drying time. This is one of those. I feel like the paper, Tomoe River, takes just slightly little longer to dry, a few seconds, not a long time, but you know, it can matter, especially for my left-hand friends out there. It can matter how long it takes that paper to absorb that ink and lock it in, you know. So I feel like this one is, you know, if I were comparing it side by side with Tomoe River and Leuchtturm, I feel like this one absorbs the ink a little faster and makes that have a lesser drying time. So I really, I don't see a lot of bleed through on these, but again, I use very juicy inks. So for those of you that like a finer line, a thinner line, and not, I say juicy inks, juicy pens. But if you're using a finer line, extra fine, and maybe some of those really fine medium point nibs, you may not notice any ghosting or any bleed through at all. All right, I have a couple of more papers I want to share with you because, well, paper is my jam and I love talking about it. I went and had to grab my husband's little notebook holder here. This is his Franklin Christoph notebook holder. And the reason I did that is because, let's see if he has it in here. I'm not going to open up his stuff because I'm sure he's got some stuff he probably doesn't want me recording. But Phil Notes. Phil Notes is a really great brand. I, for the longest time, I think for 2 or 3 years, had a Phil Notes subscription where you get like 2 packs of 3 or 2 shipments. They would send you 2 a quarter. Each quarter you would get 2 different packs of 3 little notebooks because they usually come in sets of 3 from them when you buy them from them. And if you buy them separately, they're like, you get a pack of 3 for $15, which I think is pretty good. It's like $5 a notebook. So they're really great. The paper is awesome. They have tons of colors. They are always doing themed journals. I think most recently they did like a bird theme, and they've done the national parks or the national, I think it's the national parks, or maybe they had a state, you know, the 50 states. And so they just do some really cool things with their notebooks. So Phil Notes is really great. Sometimes the paper isn't always consistent, meaning sometimes they have really thicker paper. I like to use them for my fountain pens. There was one time they did one that was like waterproof paper or something, and that didn't take fountain pen very well, but their basic standard one takes fountain pen ink really well. But this is a good, what I call bump around journal. The other reason I grabbed Damon's is because Franklin Christoph has a paper that they use in their notebooks that is sugarcane paper. Love it. Oh my gosh. Love it, love it, love it. So that sugarcane paper, this is one that is the blank one. It's not fancy paper when you look at it, but when you write on it, my goodness, it elevates the pen, the writing, the ink. It's just really great. So if you can find any, the sugarcane paper is not proprietary to Franklin Christoph, so you should be able to probably find some other companies that are using sugarcane paper. But I love Franklin Christoph. You'll hear me talk more about them in the coming months. But yes, Franklin Christoph and Phil Notes, those are also really great ones. All right, I could probably also show you a few others really quickly here. I won't talk about them. I'll just name them. Fabriano, really great. You can find these for great prices, especially if you just go with the like just basic sort of wraparound. These are Italian papers, and I feel like I don't need to say more after that, but they are fabulous. So Fabriano is another that I would put in my list. And then I have these that I've gotten on Amazon. I will put links to them below. They're kind of nondescript, don't have real like they're not a named brand or anything, and I don't even know that they were intended for fountain pens, but I bought them for retreats and for other things that I do where I give out journals to people. And I got them and I was like, well, darn, these are great for fountain pens. And they're really basic. They got about 30, maybe 60 pages in it, somewhere between 30 and 60 pages in here. And this one is white paper, and this one is a cream paper. And these are amazing. I love to gift them to people when I am shipping out product, if people have bought products for me, or if like if you come to a retreat that I'm hosting, I will usually have some little notebook for you, and it's always going to be a notebook that I would also use myself. And so these I have found are stellar, and they work really well with fountain pens, a little bit of swatching with watercolor. You can get away with some of that. They're great for markers, even alcohol markers, not so much, but the water-based markers and things like that. Even some of the paint pens like Posca, they're great with Tombow markers. So I love these because I feel like they are, and again, they're not super precious. They're just craft paper, front and back. They're nondescript. They literally have nothing on them. You can even paint your cover or do something fancy, put a bunch of stickers on it, and really make them your own. And I use these a lot throughout the year. And so by the end of the year, I end up with like, so I buy them in bulk, and I'll drop a link for you below because they are awesome. Last but definitely not least, I think I already showed Fabriano, so we'll just stick that one in there. It's just two different versions of the Fabriano. One that has a lot more pages is a little bit thicker, costs a little bit more. This one costs a little bit less. Last but not least, and I'm sure you all probably were not expecting this to be on this video, but the Happy Planner paper. It's not my favorite. I wouldn't make it like my top 3 or anything, but I would actually put it in the top 10 of fountain pen papers for me. Obviously, I've given you a lot of options here, but this paper that comes in these Happy Planners, it actually takes fountain pen really well, takes watercolor very well. So I just dropped that one in because I know a lot of you out there already have Happy Planners, and you may not have even thought about pairing your Happy Planner with your fountain pens and inks. So there you go. Those are my sort of ways of saying, actually, you don't have to use expensive paper with fountain pens. You can absolutely use paper that is easy to find and accessible, and the price doesn't break the bank. So just test different papers, find something that feels budget friendly but also premium for you. And just know that there are a lot of papers out there that can enhance and maybe even upgrade your writing experience with a fountain pen. So I invite you to give it a try. Try different ones. Order some paper sampling packs, which again, I will drop a link to a few that I know sell those, and just give them a try. So that was our 5 tips or 5 myths that I wanted to kind of do a little myth busting around when it comes to fountain pens. You don't have to use expensive paper. They aren't all fragile and dainty and only for those who, you know, consider them luxurious. They are not hard to use, and they aren't all messy, and they don't all leak everywhere, and they're not all too expensive. A fountain pen, you don't have to become a collector. I'm not trying to turn everyone into a collector, but a fountain pen can really change the way you interact with paper and your thoughts. So I invite you to give it a try. Let me know if you do, and if you have some favorites. Obviously, y'all, there are a ton of other papers and things that I haven't shared here. In fact, there's some on my list for 2025 to try out. Like I've never tried, I keep hearing about these Odyssey notebooks. I've not tried those yet, so I'm looking forward to maybe trying those. I've also not tried There's a couple other brands out there that I've never tried, like Profolio. I keep hearing people talk about these Profolio pads. There's another company out there that makes Laconic. I think I keep hearing people talk about Laconic. I keep hearing about Baron Fig, and I've not tried those. So there's some out there that I'm going to, you know, dip my toe in and try some new ones. But I'm kind of a creature of habit. When I find something I love, I stick with it. So in the comments below, let me know, what are some of your favorite paper options, and what other myths have you heard about fountain pens that you'd like me to talk about? Thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you in all the other places and spaces that we share. See you soon. So that's it, friends. Those are the 5 myths that I have heard the most in all of my time as a pen enthusiast, pen collector, and pen lover. If there are others, like I said at the end of the last little portion, if there are other myths that you have heard or that you believe in your mind that are keeping you from working with fountain pens, I invite you to tell me about them down below. Let me know your favorite pens, your favorite paper, all the things. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for being here. Have a beautiful rest of your now. Bye.